I want you to picture a library, but not like a public library where people are just sort of wandering in and out.
Right.
Picture a private, personal library that someone has built over, say, 50 years. Every single book on the shelf isn't just paper and ink. It's a tool.
It's got history.
Exactly. It's been read, annotated, dog-eared, and used to solve specific problems. Now imagine the librarian, the only person who knows exactly where everything is and why it's there, suddenly leaves the building for good.
That is, wow, that is a haunting image to start with.
Yeah,
You're talking about the loss of institutional knowledge, the brain drain when a master leaves.
Yeah, exactly. But in today's deep dive, the library we're looking at isn't made of books. It's made of stones.
Right.
We are looking at what happens when a master of their craft passes away and leaves behind this massive collection of objects that are arguably, well, maybe alive, or at least charged with a lifetime of intention.
It's a really fascinating pivot. Usually when we talk about legacy, we talk about, money, real estate, or intellectual property.
Yeah.
We rarely talk about the physical tools of a spiritual trade.
No, we don't. And we've got a really unique piece of source material today that tackles this exact thing head on. We are doing a deep dive into A Keeper's Tale, The Stones Remember by Keith Birch.
Such an interesting read.
It really is. It's a memoir, and it's currently making waves as a Kindle edition with a perfect 5-star rating from early readers. And to really get why this matters, we have to talk about the librarian in my metaphor. We have to talk about Judy Hall.
We do. And for anyone listening who might not be deep into the metaphysical scene, calling Judy Hall a librarian is almost an understatement.
Yeah.
She was more like an architect. She wrote the Crystal Bible. And that book alone is essentially the standard reference text for millions of people.
She basically defined the genre, right? Like if you walk into a crystal shop and see a little description card next to a stone, there's a solid chance that text originated from her research.
Oh, absolutely. She did. She wasn't just a collector who liked pretty rocks. She was an authority. She created the framework that many people use to understand stones today.
Right.
So when the source material talks about her private collection, we aren't talking about stuff she bought at a gift shop on a whim. We're talking about the specimens she lived with, worked with, and used to write her books. The source code, if you will.
The source code. I love that. And that's the hook for me, because the book explores the transition of this specific highly charged collection to the author Keith Birch after Judy passed away.
Yeah.
But the source material makes a really specific distinction right out of the gate. It says Keith didn't become the owner. He became the guardian.
Right.
Is that just semantic fluff, or is there a real difference there in the context of the book?
Oh, it's a massive difference. And I think it's the central tension of the entire book. Ownership implies dominance.
No.
If I own a toaster, I can use it, sell it, or smash with a hammer. It's mine. Guardianship, on the other hand, implies that the object has its own trajectory, its own rights, almost, and you are just facilitating its safety for a while.
So it's like looking after a friend's cat versus owning a sofa.
That's actually a great analogy. You don't own the cat. You serve the cat.
Right. Anyone with a cat knows that.
Exactly. And in this book, Keith Birch is really grappling with serving these stones. The text says he was entrusted with them. And that word, entrusted, does a lot of heavy lifting. It implies a burden of duty.
Let's dig into that duty, because the source describes the passing of Judy Hall as the catalyst for all of this. It wasn't just a sad event. It created a logistical and spiritual crisis.
Where do the stones go?
Exactly. Where do they go? The text mentions that these stones touched countless lives through Judy's work. So Keith isn't just inheriting minerals, he's inheriting a reputation.
And arguably, he's inheriting the energy of those countless lives. If you subscribe to the philosophy laid out in the book, these aren't static objects, they are recording devices.
And that brings us to the core philosophy. I want to spend some time here because I think this is where the real insight lies for you, the listener. The book invites readers to stop seeing crystals as objects of beauty and start seeing them as living companions.
Living companions. It's a radical shift in perspective.
It is, but help me understand the mechanics of that. The source uses terms like carriers of memory, intention, and subtle guidance.
Right.
For the listener who maybe just likes the way, say, amethyst looks on their desk, what does carrier of memory actually mean in this context?
Well, think about how we treat heirlooms in the secular world.
Mm-hmm.
If you have your grandmother's wedding ring, you treat it differently than a ring you just bought at a department store.
Sure, because of the sentimental value.
Right, because you project memory onto it. But this book goes a step further. It suggests the memory isn't just in your head, It's actually in the stone.
So the stone is like a hard drive.
In a way, yes. The concept here is that crystalline structures, because of their extreme stability and order, can hold energetic patterns or intentions placed there by people like Judy Hall.
Wow.
So when Keith picks up a stone from this collection, he isn't just holding silica. He's connecting to the specific work Judy did with that stone.
Which explains why the book is called A Keeper's Tale.
Huh.
You're keeping the data safe.
Precisely. And that leads directly to the concept of stewardship mentioned in the text. Stewardship is about maintenance, but not just, polishing them or keeping the dust off.
The source actually mentions quiet communion and transformative experiences of listening.
Yes.
Now, listening is a tricky word here. We aren't talking about auditory hallucinations, right? The book isn't suggesting the rocks are talking in English.
No, not typically. In this context, listening means tuning into that subtle guidance. It's intuition.
Okay.
It's sitting with the object and asking, where do you need to go? What is your purpose now? It's a practice of extreme empathy, extended to the inanimate world.
It sounds almost humble, like you have to lower your own ego to listen to a rock.
That is the key insight right there.
Mm-hmm.
The book argues that we need to move from collecting, which is fundamentally ego-driven. It's about mine, I have the rarest one.
Right, the hoarding mentality.
Exactly. Moving from that to stewardship, which is service-driven, it's asking, how can I help this object fulfill its destiny?
So if I'm the listener tuning in right now, looking around at the stuff in my house, the takeaway is that I'm just a temporary custodian.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
We are all just roommates with our possessions. They will likely outlast us. This book just formalizes that relationship and adds a layer of spiritual responsibility to it.
That's a profound way to look at the physical world. I want to get into the specific characters in this memoir, though.
Let's do it.
Because the source material actually names names. It's not just Judy's collection as some vague, abstract concept. It highlights specific stones.
It does.
It mentions rare Trigonic Quartz and ancient Ajoite. Now, I'll be honest, those sound like sci-fi elements to me. What are we actually looking at here?
Okay, let's break down the jargon because it really matters for the story. Trigonic quartz is a very specific formation. Physically, it has these little inverted triangular etchings or indentations on the faces of the crystal.
Just naturally occurring triangles.
Naturally occurring, yes.
Yeah.
And in the collector community, these are often called record keepers.
Record keepers. Well, that fits the theme of memory perfectly.
Exactly. They're believed to be the ultimate storage devices for spiritual wisdom. So finding a Trigonic quartz in Judy Hall's collection is like finding a secret diary or a lost manuscript.
Yeah.
It's incredibly significant.
Okay, that makes sense. And the Ajoite, that sounds exotic.
Ajoite is a blue-green mineral, usually found as an inclusion inside quartz. It's incredibly rare. It mostly comes from a specific mine in South Africa that's effectively closed to commercial mining now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And spiritually, it's known as a master healer for emotions. So we have a record keeper and a master healer. These aren't random pebbles. They are absolute heavy hitters in the mineral world.
And the book details Keith's specific journey with these stones. It says they began a new journey. And this part really caught my attention. The source says certain stones seem to find their next guardians in unexpected ways.
That phrasing is crucial. Notice how it attributes agency to the stones.
Right. It's not Keith decided to sell the Ajoite to make some space. It's the Ajoite found a new guardian.
Huh.
How does that work practically? Does the book give us a glimpse into that matchmaking process?
It implies a series of synchronicities. You're thinking about a specific problem, and suddenly someone calls you who needs exactly the energy that one specific stone provides.
Yeah.
The practical reality of stewardship the book mentions involves navigating these coincidences. Keith isn't a salesman here. He's a bridge.
A bridge. I like that. But bridges get walked on. It sounds exhausting to be the middleman for hundreds of living companions.
It can be, because to be a bridge, you have to let things go. And that actually brings us to the emotional core of the book. We can't ignore the gentle note to readers that the source highlights.
Yeah, let's shift gears here. Because up until now, we've been talking about magic rocks and guardians. It sounds very fantasy novel.
It does.
But the source explicitly states, this book contains personal reflections on grief, loss, mental health, and healing from trauma. That is a very real, very heavy anchor.
It grounds the entire narrative. Without that note, this could just be a catalog of cool rocks.
Yeah.
With that note, it becomes a memoir about being human.
Why do you think he included that? Is it just a trigger warning, or is it central to the method of the book?
I think it's entirely central. Think about the timeline. Judy Hall, his mentor, his friend, dies. He is left with her legacy. There's a recipe for profound grief.
Right.
The stewardship of the stones wasn't a distraction from the grief. The text suggests it was the actual method of processing it.
So when he's listening to the stones, he's also processing the loss of the person who gave them to him.
Exactly. The source mentions transformative experiences of listening to inner guidance. Grief cracks you open. It makes you vulnerable.
It really does.
And in that vulnerability, Keith finds a connection to these objects. It suggests that spiritual connection isn't always about love and light and happy vibes. Sometimes it's forged in the absolute fire of loss.
It mentions healing from trauma specifically. That suggests a journey. He didn't start okay, he had to get there.
And the stones were his companions on that walk. It redefines what a tool is. A hammer builds a house. Maybe these stones built a pathway out of depression or grief for him.
That makes the book much more accessible, I think. The source says it's written for both longtime crystal enthusiasts and those just beginning their journey.
Yes, because you don't need to know what Trigonic Quartz is to understand the pain of losing a mentor.
Exactly.
You don't need to believe in energy fields to understand the immense weight of inheriting your loved one's things.
Yeah.
That universal human experience of loss is the gateway, so to speak, into the more esoteric concepts in the book.
It's a tender reminder, as the text calls it. I think that tenderness is what's missing in a lot of expert literature. Usually it's remarkably dry.
Agreed. This feels intimate. It's a peek behind the curtain. We usually see the expert, Judy Hall. This book shows us the human relationships behind the expert and the human messiness of what happens when the expert is gone.
It also challenges the hoarding instinct we talked about earlier. I mean, if I had the crown jewels of the crystal world, my instinct would be to lock them in a vault. These are mine. I am the successor.
Most people would feel that way.
But the book celebrates the dispersal.
That is the ultimate test of stewardship. If you truly believe these things are living companions with a purpose to help people, then locking them in a vault is a crime. It's imprisonment.
Wow. So hoarding is literally a form of prison for these objects.
In this worldview, yes. Being a good steward means knowing when to say goodbye. It means realizing that your time with the object is done and it needs to go do work somewhere else.
Friendships and conversations sparked by these sacred stones, that's a line from the source. It really paints a picture of a community held together by these physical objects moving between them.
It's a network, a mycelial network of people connected by quartz and agate. Keith is just the node that held it all together for a critical moment of transition.
It also speaks to the quality of the interactions. It's not just about selling a rock on the internet. It's about the conversations that happen. It sounds like the transfer of the stone is almost an excuse for human connection.
That's a beautiful way to put it. The stone is the catalyst. It brings two people together, the current keeper and the new keeper, and in that exchange, stories are shared, memories of Judy are shared, and the legacy expands.
It doesn't get diluted.
No, it gets distributed.
So let's zoom out a bit. We've looked at the legacy of Judy Hall. We've unpacked the philosophy of living companions versus dead objects. We've looked at the specific stones like Ajoite and Trigonic Quartz.
And we've touched on the heavy human themes of grief and trauma.
It's a lot for one memoir to cover.
It is.
But if you had to boil it down, if you had to give the listener the elevator pitch of why they should care about Keith Birch's journey, what is it?
I think the core message is that we are never truly owners. We are only ever keepers. Whether it's a crystal, a house, a relationship, or even our own bodies, we are tasked with caring for them, learning from them, and eventually gracefully passing them on.
It completely changes the way you look at your life. It makes it less about accumulation and more about quality of care.
Quality care, that's it. And quality of attention. Are you paying attention to the things in your life? Are you actually listening to them?
The text calls it a new journey, not just for the stones, but for Keith. And I suppose for the reader, too. It's an invitation to shift your mindset.
It invites the reader to start their own journey of listening, to look at the rock on their shelf or the book or the painting and ask, okay, what's your story? And what is my role in it?
It's funny, we started this deep dive asking what happens to wisdom when a master dies. And the answer this book seems to offer is, it doesn't die. It just changes form. It fragments and spreads out.
It disperses, like seeds from a dandelion. Judy's collection was the flower head. When she passed, the wind blew, the grief, the change, and Keith helped those seeds find new soil.
That is a brilliant image. And it brings us to our final thought for you, the listener. We want you to look around the room you're in right now, find an object. Maybe it's a watch, a book, a tool you use for your work.
Ask yourself if this object is a carrier of memory, like Keith Birch suggests, What is it remembering about you right now?
And the bigger question, when the time comes, will you be able to let it go to its next guardian?
Are you an owner or are you a keeper?
Big questions from a book about stones. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us today.
Always a pleasure.
See you next time.